What's up, everybody? Good evening, and welcome to Week 4 of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show, a special Sunday edition. And I'm kind of glad we're going on a Sunday. I'm not going to lie. Had a crazy opening Week 0 this year. We're going to get into that very quickly, and then we're going to give our Big East or Big Ten preview. We saved the best for last. Obviously, this one's probably like we promised. Probably going to be a little bit spicy tonight. All three people vying for the same rung on the ladder, shall you say, and going to be some spirited discussions tonight, I believe. But before we get going, I'm your host, Uncle Shally. To my top left, as always, do every podcast with this guy. My Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How are you this Sunday evening, sir?
Feeling good, man. Feeling good. I know we're about to get into it here shortly, but college football is quite literally among us, and the chaos started early. Can't wait to talk about it. This being the Big Ten show as well. Like, Alex, welcome to the best conference in all of college football at the moment. It's going to be a fun one, and I'm looking forward to really getting after it tonight.
So, as Cottrell already mentioned, we've obviously talked about it numerous times on the show. Oregon Ducks joining the Big Ten this year. It's a big deal because obviously our other co-host is from the West Coast, a diehard Oregon Ducks fan. He's going to see, what tough fall football really looks like this year. So it is going to be it's going to be a hell of a ride, boys. Not going to lie. It's going to be great. But in saying all that, good evening, Mr. Alex Elmore. How are you, sir?
I'm great, man. I feel relaxed. I needed a little vacation before we got into this episode, so I'm glad we were able to watch college football yesterday, and now we're kind of able to recap and go over the Big Ten preview. But, man, I tell you, I enjoyed it much better when I was in a little party of my own over there in the Pac-12, and I could watch you guys fight it out. But now I have opinions. Now my opinions matter. Now my team affects your teams, and I'm so excited to watch all of your hearts break. Because all three of our teams are playing a round robin this year. We're all getting a chance to play each other. So we're all going to have that 1v1 matchup that we've been looking forward to all year. So I'm excited. I'm excited to preview that today.
So before we get into that, we are going to give our Big Ten breakdown. It's going to be a deep dive. Listen, like I said, it's a conference near and dear all to our hearts. And I think there's a very, very good chance that the national champion comes out of the Big Ten again this year. So deep dive on the Big Ten. We're going to break down all three of our teams. Obviously, going to have a lot of Penn State talk as well. And then, whoever else we think has a chance to sneak in. Before that, though, we're going to recap what happened yesterday. Week 0, usually not a week of surprises. Usually just kind of a couple teams play and, they go through the motions, get their win. But it's, it's just a nice first day of football for all of us fans. Not this year. Not this year at all. Week 0 delivered. If you're looking for chaos, and as I hate to say it, but as podcasters, chaos is a good thing for show material. And boy, did we get a healthy dose of it yesterday. So we're going to get into that right away, right off the bat here. And then obviously we'll do our HEISMAN watch. And then we'll do our college football eliminator. It's going to be an interesting discussion today because we got to put the Big Ten teams on, and there's somebody moving already. So it's going to be a fun show, to say the least. But let's dive right into it. Got to address the elephant in the room right away. Week 0, Dublin, Ireland. Georgia Tech, who is, I will give Alex his roses, somebody who has been saying, don't write Georgia Tech off every week. They're a tough team this year. They might pull an upset here or there. Well, Alex's fruition, came to fruition. Florida State, number 10th ranked team in the country, a team that a lot of some people, some pundits have as an outside chance of possibly winning a natty. DJU transferring in, very, very, very good haul from the portal. Good returning depth and leadership and experience on both sides of the ball. They went out and laid an egg yesterday. Well, I don't want to say that.
Man, we got old Yellergate again.
Oh boy. There he goes. I'm here.
I've been here. I don't know why it kicked me out again. I don't know.
Listen. Being perfectly, just be honest with you. This show is going straight forward tonight. So when we get to the Big Ten, if your dog runs through your modem again or whatever, there's going to be no Oregon material on this show. Because we will just not let you back in. We will just not let you back in.
I believe that.
It's like the Pac-12.
Where are we at? Are we talking about Georgia Tech, Florida State still?
Yeah, so Georgia Tech, got to give them credit, man. I don't know what it looked like to you guys. To me, they looked like the tougher, more physical team that were ready to go. They looked like they were ready to go. Florida State had just lapses in that game to me where it just looked like they were in camp. Overall, I thought the offense for the most part for Florida State played okay. I thought DJ, you looked good. I'm not going to lie. I don't think anything he did yesterday was the problem. They couldn't run the ball worth a damn at all. Georgia Tech's front seven dominated Florida State. That is super surprising to me. And I will tell you on the other side of the ball, Florida State's defense looks soft. If that's what you're getting out of that team all year, they're in trouble. They are in trouble. But Georgia Tech goes over to Dublin, pulls off the shocker of the year. I know it's only week 0, but it's a big one. 24-21. Georgia Tech kicker kicks a walk-off field goal. Thoughts, reactions?
I mean, my immediate thought was just looking at how that team looked. DJ is going to have to learn how to throw the ball downfield. The way that the running attack looked, it seemed like Georgia Tech was able to have so many people in the box. They weren't afraid of DJ bombing them over the top. And I understand that, DJ's really never been that guy outside of his true freshman year when he was at Clemson and came in relief of Trevor Lawrence, that game against Notre Dame. I mean, really outside of that, we've never seen DJ be the guy to really just air it out and, go full bombs away. So I think for them to really open up that offense, DJ is going to have to start to do that. And the other thing that you mentioned that I 100% agree with is that Florida State's defense looks soft, and in particularly the defensive line. You could tell, I understand they lost a lot of talents to the league last year. A lot of first, second round picks that went to the NFL that were really good players on that Florida State team, but they were still expected to have a lot of talent coming back. And, Pete Family even said before the game started on College Game Day that he thought Florida State was going to have the best defensive line in all of college football. I thought that was kind of crazy to say, but I understood it coming from like a talent standpoint that they would be up there within the top 5, top 10 range. So for them to come out and look like that on the defensive side of the ball, really just get moved wherever Georgia Tech wanted to take them, it was really surprising. And I think this can either be the start of something big for that Florida State team, or this could be very similar to what we saw last year out of Clemson, losing week 1 to Duke. I think this could be a situation where Mike Norvell's like, hey, you guys came out, you thought that we were more talented. We were going to go out there, punch Georgia Tech in the mouth, and they would just kind of roll over, and that's not what happened. I mean, I got that feel from just the start of the game. They went down the field right away, hot knife through butter, scored the first drive, and they said, hey, we're going for 2 to start the season. And they ran their little swing door screen pass or whatever that converted that 2-point conversion. To me, it felt like Florida State just didn't respect that Georgia Tech team. They thought they were going to come in, do whatever they wanted to do, and that wasn't the case. So there's 2 ways that teams respond to stuff like this. They either just go in the corner and get in the fetal position and just whatever happens, or they say, hey, we're a lot better than this. We're way more talented than this. And they rally around a loss like that, and they take every single game personal with a chip on their shoulder. I think their whole season is still ahead of them, but I think this was a major loss. I think that Florida State team is way too talented for me to just write them off at this point. But at the same time, if DJ is going to look like that the entire season, that defensive line looks like that the entire season, they're going to be lucky to be bowl eligible. Like, I'll come out flatly and say that. They're going to be lucky if they're bowl eligible if they look like that on the defensive line and at the quarterback position every single week.
Alex.
I mean, plain and simple, I texted you guys Friday night just to get it on record. I was like, Georgia Tech plus 10.5 is lock of the weekend. I said that. I wasn't saying that Georgia Tech was going to win, but I knew that it was going to be a close game. I knew they were going to fight well, especially opening game of the season. Anybody who schedules a conference opponent week 0, you better have your team ready to play. And Georgia Tech did. The offensive line was moving Florida State's defensive line all over the field. It was the Haynes show, man. We had Haynes King, efficient and effective at the quarterback position, 11 for 16, super efficient behind his O-line. And then, of course, we had Jamal Haynes, 11 carries, 75 yards, just under 7 yards a carry. He said it was the Haynes show all day. Like I said, Haynes King, he may not be a Heisman contender, but that dude can change the game with his feet, his arm, the way he sells the play action. I mean, dude can do it all. I think Georgia Tech may not be in conversation to win the ACC this year, but I think there's another team on their schedule somewhere that they're going to knock off that is going to be in that talks. And I said, this Georgia Tech team is filthy, and I love it. I can't wait to support them the rest of the year.
Yeah, so, I mean, when we previewed Florida State, I mean, I think, Cottrell even mentioned it. The concern for the defense was going to be how quick kind of the back end gelled with the new guys and the new starters they were breaking in there. I agree with what Cottrell said. Pete Thamel pregame called them, quite possibly the best defensive line in the country. That's absurd. I'm not even going to, there's two people on this show that can just absolutely guarantee you have the better defensive lines in Florida State. But that's neither here nor there.
I'd say all three.
I mean, that's an argument we could have too. It's just crazy to me how much more physical Georgia Tech was in that game. And every time, I thought, all right, Florida State needs to stop. 3rd and 4, needs to stop. Somebody's going to make a play. Somebody's going to get in the backfield, disrupt. Nope. And Georgia Tech, crazy thing about Georgia Tech was they weren't really even hiding what they were going to do. They weren't even be all right, we got to run a trick play here or we're going to pass the ball. They just ran the ball up the middle, down their throats, nothing. They're not making contact with kids till 5-6 yards downfield. They just got dominated. Listen, I'll say this, and I've said it on other shows. I think it's not the end of their season by any means. Their margin of error is gone because depending on what, obviously if Georgia Tech turns into some juggernaut that we didn't see coming and they're 9-3, 10-2 at the end of the year, it's not going to be that bad of a loss. But if Georgia Tech ends up 8-4, 7-5, something like that, I said it with Notre Dame and I said it with even Penn State. For teams that don't have, and Missouri, teams that don't have a huge strength of schedule, your losses are going to matter more this year in regards to getting in. Now, obviously, they still have the caveat they can go win the ACC and none of this matters. But I mean, if you're being realistic, Florida State fan right now, I don't know if you can realistically say that that's possibly even on the table for you right now. Obviously, we still have to see Clemson play. We got to see Miami play. And I understand it's week 0 before people go nuts. That's just not a game you can lose, though. It's just not.
Can I say something crazy, though?
Sure.
They play a team next week in Boston College that has a very similar offensive play style with a very similar running style quarterback. And I can't remember his first name, but last name is Castellanos, who ran for over 1,000 yards last year. Florida State could be in trouble if they don't fix it this week because, like I said, with a similar offense coming at them next week, it could spell an 0-2 start and the end of their season before they even get into their first non-conference game in week 3.
I can't even tell you how catastrophic 0-2 would be for that program. Because Cottrell kind of hinted at it before. You go 0-2 when everybody all summer was telling you that you're going to make the playoff and you guys have a chip on your shoulder from being screwed last year and you're going to win the ACC. Yeah. And you had one of the best, they had arguably the best transfer portal out of anybody. And you start 0-2 and you realize everything you wrote on the chalkboard, the top 3 things are pretty much gone. That can turn disastrous really quick, really quick.
Well, the thing is, you start 0-2, you also start 0-2 in conference play.
Correct.
That's
and with no division to bail you out this year, you're asking for a lot of people to lose a lot of games in front of you. You'll have guys start checking out. Portal crap. You don't want to deal with those questions after week 2. And I think everybody thought, after last year, Mike Norvell was probably super safe. They fall on their face this year. I think he goes right back on the hot seat again. But listen, we're far away from that. I think you see a way better effort out of them next week. But to Alex's point, I don't know if anybody remembers, they went to Boston College last year and they pulled that game out by the skin of their teeth.
War was a legit war, and Jordan Travis was playing in that game.
Correct. They really had no business winning that game, if we're being honest. And again, Alex maybe Alex should be an ACC guy. He's the pulse of the ACC. Maybe he's just in the wrong conference.
That might be it.
But their defense couldn't stop anybody last year either in that Boston College game. Boston College ran up and down the field in them last year. Very curious to see the reaction, and really curious to see how Florida State plays next week, next Saturday.
Monday. It's a Monday. It's a Monday night game on 4:30.
It is a Monday night game, right? Labor Day game.
4:30 our time, 7:30 y'all's time.
And that's in Tallahassee, I'm assuming.
Yep. Yeah, spread right now is Florida State is -17. I do know last time I looked, it was like -23. I think is what it opened at.
Superdog week 1, maybe for something. I'm looking at.
If we had a show yesterday morning, I would have. I mean, it wasn't what Superdog's 12 and a half points, right?
15. It's got to be 15.
Okay. So Georgia Tech wouldn't have been a Superdog yesterday, but starting out at a 13.5 point underdog, ending at 10.5, something just seemed fishy. So I'm excited to see what Boston College can do. I was kind of talking them up in our ACC week, so next week's gonna be a good test to see.
It's funny you say that though too, because Georgia Tech. While I was watching the game, I saw a stat that popped up, and their head coach is basically a monster when it comes to in-conference games against ranked opponents, unless it's Clemson. Dabo's the only one that's really, been caving his head in since he's been in the conference. But I want to say they said he has either 5 or 6 ranked wins against within the conference. So for a team like Georgia Tech to be there that hasn't had, crazy talent, the last 4 or 5 years or whatever, for them to consistently beat these ranked teams. And Andre even said it in the chat earlier, this is the same Georgia Tech team that had no business beating Miami, but beat Miami last year after Mario Cristobal pissed the game away. So got to give them credit. They step up to the table. They step up to the plate when the big time opponents are in front of them. I felt super weird about the game yesterday. I didn't think that Florida State was necessarily going to come out and lose, but just it being in Ireland, it being a conference game to start the year, I told you guys in the group messages, I wouldn't have touched that spread like 10-foot pole because I didn't know either way how it could go. I could have easily saw, Georgia Tech playing tight in that game, going down to the wire, similar to how it did. I could have easily saw Florida State just blowout where it felt like Georgia Tech didn't get off the bus just because they weren't prepared for physicality of that Florida State team and things like that. So got to give Georgia Tech credit for really being ready and having their head on straight, because after that first drive, it could have gotten ugly. It really could have gotten ugly. They could have just been like, man, Florida State, they didn't even do anything impressive. They went straight down the field, and to make matters worse, they went for 2 on us, and we had no answer. So give credit to Georgia Tech sticking in there and ultimately find a way to pull that game out.
It really felt to me, and Cottrell, Alex will probably know what I'm talking about too, though. Like, it was 14 and a half, and then I was expecting not the avalanche per se, but like, okay, Florida State's going to go in, make adjustments, come out, probably score quick, and then this will end up being like a 10-point game. That's where I thought it was going to end up being. I've seen it with Michigan before having slow first halves, or you guys against Rutgers last year had I don't want to say slow, but just you guys weren't sharp. And you come out in the second half and you still win by 21. That's what it felt like to me was going to happen. And like I said, not to a 3 or 4 possession type level type thing, but it was going to be like a 10-point win. That's where I thought we were ultimately going to end up there. They would come out with a little bit of heart, a little bit of fire, and start kind of taking it to Georgia Tech a little bit. Never happened. There was no spark there. I don't know if you want to call it heart. I don't know how you want to classify it. Those kids, to me, on the Florida State side, did not look ready, and I hate to use the word really interested, but guys on the defense did not look interested in playing that football game. It was not a good display. I don't know how else to put it. Those kids just didn't look ready to go. They parts of that game, I feel like Florida State, like I said in the opening, treated it like it was a scrimmage and not week 1 in a huge game against a conference opponent. Very surprising, very disappointing. Again, it doesn't hurt me. I'm not a Florida State fan, but if you're a Florida State fan down in Tallahassee right now, I think you have to look in the mirror and have a serious conversation about what your football team might look like by the middle of October, because it might not be what you thought it was a week ago. So. Then another crazy game, another almost not national title implication type upset, but Montana State was playing New Mexico, I believe. New Mexico State. I think it's New
It was
Mexico.
New Mexico.
Same thing, 21-point favorite, minus like 900 on the money line. They were down 14 with like 9 minutes to go and somehow won the game. They scored 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Ended up winning by 4, I believe, 35-31. That was a crazy game. I don't know if you guys tuned in. I watched the last probably quarter of it. And it was, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, Montana just came out, and it was like everything they had in the game plan. The coach just like took the binder, threw it in the trash, and they were just like calling stuff on the fly, and everything was working. It was crazy to watch. The last 8-9 minutes of that game, but college football's back, man. I'm so happy. Week 0 didn't disappoint. Any other reflections or comments you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, dude, the SMU Nevada game was absolutely fire. And SMU scored 16 in the fourth quarter to come back and win on a 35-yard touchdown pass from Preston Stone to the guy I called one of the best tight ends in college football, if not the best, in R.J. Maryland. Dude had over 170 yards receiving yesterday. Preston Stone didn't do himself any favors as a Heisman hopeful, but SMU found a way to win on the road in Nevada. Like I said, anytime you're on the road week 0, first week, no matter where you go, the crowd's going to be jumping. So I imagine the atmosphere was absolutely crazy. SMU walked out with that 29-24 win. So good start to the season for my ACC hopeful in SMU.
I know, Alex, don't you dare try to spin it that way. It had no business being a tight game against Nevada. I don't care if it was on the road. I don't care who was on the field for them. Don't try and spin it that way. They had no business playing a game that tight. I understand you're happy that your ACC pick is still alive and ended up on the right side of the 1 and the O there, but don't try and spin it like Nevada was just this great team that they had to go on the road to conquer. And then as far as the other game goes, Montana State is bad as as crazy as a line as it was. Let's also put it in perspective that is an FCS school. An FCS school was favored over an FBS school by that much. So it's not like, Montana State was. I get it; they're the better football team. Clearly, you saw how they attacked the game after they were down at that point. But let's just not act like that. This was a even battle here. They're a division lower, so although they were favored, let's still keep it in perspective. They went out and beat an FBS school. So wanted to give Montana State some love. They're going to be in the mix for an FCS championship this year, just like San Diego, South Dakota State and South Dakota, North Dakota State. All those Dakota schools are going to be in the mix. Montana State's going to be right there with them.
I was going to say, we don't talk about FCS on here a lot, and maybe it's something, honestly, this year, now that we kind of have like our format, and it's something I think we should probably check into more, here and there when we have time, especially because there's a couple teams around where I'm from that are always very good in it. Cottrell also usually has teams in his area. I don't know. I mean, I guess those teams are considered, Pacific Northwest teams. But I think it's crazy. If I'm incorrect, I might be. But I think the top 4 teams in the FCS preseason anyway are like Montana, Montana State, and then North Dakota, or maybe it's North Dakota State, or South Dakota.
South. I think it's Montana State. Well, South Dakota State's going to be your number 1. They're back-to-back reigning champions. So South Dakota State's 1. I think North Dakota State is 2, and then you got South Dakota and Montana State, I believe, are your top 4.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like just that whole area up there has just become an FCS powerhouse. And then you factor in, some of the normal teams that are usually around end of the year. But like I said, we'll probably touch on that stuff a little bit more, along the course of the year. Not huge segments or anything, but we don't talk about it as enough as we should, because again, you just saw an FCS team just beat a Division I team, not handily, but they were, like Cottrell said, they were definitely the better football team. Old Yeller, Jesus Christ.
And I mean, while we got Alex away here too, just other thing like real quick here that I'll mention. You start to see that these teams are not afraid to step up and play a level of competition. Now, I'm not saying New Mexico is a world beater or anything like that, but even in week 1, you got South Dakota State is going to be going to Oklahoma State to be playing, Mike Gundy and the Cowboys there. I think that could potentially be a interesting game to look at when you think about all things considered. South Dakota State did lose a lot from their championship team, but they got a ton of talent, and they returned their starting quarterback, who's probably the best quarterback to ever step foot on that campus there. So it'll be interesting.
I think it's going to be. I don't disagree with you, but I'll double down another way. There's a lot of, I would say mid-tier and even upper-tier teams that don't want to schedule those guys. They don't, because at the end of the day, on paper, you just go, oh, like you guys be an FCS school, like congratulations, you're supposed to, because you're not really getting the inherent kind of danger or upset factor that's really factored into those games because it's there. Like I to your point, I promise you, if Oklahoma State comes out Saturday and looks like Florida State, that will be a tight ball game down the stretch with the potential for a seismic upset. So I give those teams credit because they continue to build and they keep getting better and better. They're getting kids that are kind of falling through the cracks, that aren't worried about NIL, that just want to play and get better and get draft eligible. You see more and more kids drafted from those programs every single year. They turn out to be, they're not superstars, but they turn out to be quality pros. Like they're guys that are on NFL rosters that are playing, regular snaps. A lot of big programs that don't want to schedule them. They don't. And that's the part that a lot of people probably won't want to say out loud, but it's the truth.
And I know we're not quite at week 1 yet, but I gotta highlight the other one too. North Dakota State is going to be playing Colorado next weekend, and I know a lot of people, I should say casuals, they think this is the North Dakota State team of old, and they think this is the most dominant team up the FCS level. Make no mistake about it, that's South Dakota State now. But with that said, North Dakota State's going to come into that game against Colorado knowing that all the eyes are going to be on that game. Colorado draws a ton of audience, especially early while they still have no losses. I 100% think that's going to be another game that you're going to see that FCS team step up to the plate, make it competitive as hell.
Agreed. I mean, listen, I don't think anybody thinks Colorado in one season has turned that defense into some kind of juggernaut. So while I think the offense, with Shador and obviously with Travis Hunter back, it is going to be a lot to contend with. North Dakota State could throw the ball and stay in that game. Like Cottrell said, you just got to get to the fourth quarter. You never know what's going to happen. Not an easy game by any means to open your season, because that is a team that's good enough that if you make a bunch of mistakes, they're going to make you pay for them. That's what those teams do. And like I said, that's why a lot of bigger schools don't schedule those guys, because they are
Appalachian State, Michigan rings a real loud bell.
Correct. You're 100% right. They came off 2 straight national championships. They went in there. We played sloppy as hell, and they handed our ass to us.
I'm not saying that because you're a Michigan fan. That's just for me, the first big real upset that I remember when I was a kid was Appalachian State, Michigan.
At the time.
The time. But and it's a prime example. We played awful in that game. We made mistakes. We threw interceptions. We fumbled the ball. And they were – I don't think what people don't realize, too, is when you watch these FCS teams play, it is – you can watch, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan. You're going to have sophomores starting all over the place because that's how they recruit. You watch an FCS team almost across the board, it's almost always seniors and juniors, always. And some of the juniors, leaving me redshirt juniors, they are all 21, 22-year-old men. They've been in the program for 4 years. Those guys don't leave early to go to the draft. They've been there 2 years waiting their turn to play. They're battle tested. They're good, solid football players, and that's why a lot of teams don't want to play them. You are not going to get you're not going to have North Dakota State or North Dakota State going to Colorado and turn the ball over 6 times. It just won't happen. You won't see it. It's not like you're playing. No offense, but it's not like you're playing Kent State. It's those teams are better than those teams. So they're all good examples, and I think you're going to see. I hate to say it, you're probably going to see less and less of it now with the extended playoff and these huge conference schedules now, because it's just
Dante, that's definitely a fact. I'm with you there. South Dakota State's offensive line is incredible. I think they just lost their starting center. I think he did go to the NFL this past year, so it'd be interesting to see how they replace him. But South Dakota State's line and their skills, I mean, they got a ton of great players there. That's probably going to be my like low key game, Oklahoma State, South Dakota State, that I'm like seriously going to be into. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll get there when we get there next week.
We are.
For
It
the
is next
week one
But
preview.
Again, it's another good point. And that team is loaded with guys that have been playing there for 2 or 3 years. You're not getting the freshmen. You're not getting any of that stuff. It matters. It matters. Line of scrimmage matters. Don't believe me? Go watch Florida State, Georgia Tech. Go watch that game. Go watch that game, and I'll tell you all you need to know about line of scrimmage. But that being said, it's time. It's time to get into it. It's time to preview the Big Ten. Before we getting into all the hooting and the hollering, we will go over the least kept secret in the world. We're adding 4 new members this year. Obviously, the Oregon Ducks, UCLA Bruins, USC Trojans, Washington Huskies. Now, while geographically this doesn't make as much sense as, like, say, some of the SEC editions, but financially and also getting the most 4 prestigious and accomplished schools from the Pac-12 all come in the same year and join the Big Ten is a big freaking deal. And that's where we're at. So,
and I also think like a small part of it too is like these schools that we got, like they also can contend in basketball. So like that's also going to be a big money grab. Obviously, college football is king for these schools. Like that's where all the money's going to be. But I mean, Oregon, UCLA, USC, I get it. They haven't been that good, but they recruit wise, they're going to have some good recruits. And then Washington, we've seen them have success, a few years back, but we've seen them have a successful basketball program as well.
UCLA is still debatably a basketball school, if we're being honest.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, not and again, and then you're talking other sports. You go into, like even the smaller sports.
You talk about women's sports. Oregon Ducks are dominant in women's sports.
Congrats.
Definitely not women's sports.
Wow.
But all the other sports like baseball, soccer, all that, it makes the conference so much better. But football it does as well. It's going to open that whole area to recruiting. And it goes both ways. USC obviously has had, has always kind of had a stranglehold in recruiting in California, but there's just so many good kids that come out of California. They end up on programs all over the country, but it will give, however you want to slice it, it gives a bigger foothold in California for Ohio State, for Michigan, for Penn State. It all helps. And then, and obviously the Pacific Northwest now, it's going to be a lot easier to go in there and recruit because, you can't say if you're a kid that thought you were going to go to Oregon your whole life, be like, well, I'm going to stay on the West Coast and just play in this weather. Well, no, you're going to go to Michigan, you're going to go to Ohio State, Penn State, no matter what anyway. And vice versa. You look at the whole geographical landscape in the Midwest. Now Oregon can do the same thing. They can go in there and recruit kids. USC can go in there and recruit kids. Like,
You've already kind of seen it with Oregon too. Like they just landed the best safety in the country, and Trey McNutt, kid from Ohio. He's going to Oregon. I'm sure a part of it was like, hey, while I know Oregon is across the country, I'm going to be back on this side of the country. Like if we got a game against Indiana or Illinois, like Michigan State, like from Northeast Ohio, those are very, very easy games to travel to. So I do think it matters a ton for Oregon because a lot of kids may be scared to leave home and just be that far away from home. But just knowing that they're going to be back over on this side of the country anyway, pretty much throughout half the season, I'm sure that gives Oregon, and on the flip side for Ohio State and Michigan, recruiting kids from like California, Washington area, it gives them that same advantage as well. So it's definitely a cool thing added to recruiting.
It's really kind of a shame, though, that, Chip Kelly and Dante Moore aren't still at UCLA and, Kalen DeBoer isn't still at Washington because the Big Ten would be getting 4 powerhouse schools being added to their being added to their roster. And it would obviously be Chip Kelly and the starting quarterback Dante Moore leaving town in UCLA, and then obviously Washington losing the national championship game to this year being unranked, and us really not knowing what that team's going to look like. Really, it's just a USC and Oregon are going to really be adding to the depth of this, of this already deep pack. So I'm excited to see how the Pac-12 school teams do. I wish the UCLA and Washington product that the Big Ten was going to see for the first year was a little bit better on the field.
You kind of snuck in that word powerhouse, but I'll let it slide. I guess
powerhouse. That's a big word. Did I say that? I didn't mean to say that. My bad.
You did. You talking about Washington and UCLA, you said 2 more powerhouses, and last I checked, I don't know when the last time those 4. I mean, granted, USC had their success in the early 2000s, but I mean, talking college football, I don't know about powerhouses, but I'll let it slide though. I'll let it slide.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I think you're looking at Lincoln Riley's a big name. Dan Lanning, obviously at Oregon. I'm gonna give you a little pushback on Jedd Fisch because I think he's a good coach. I think it's going to take him a year or 2 to get that program back up to where it was after everybody left in the portal with the board. But in my opinion, UCLA is the only one that's really got to rebuild here. And after watching their press conference and everything else in the winter,
exactly, Dustin. They'll understand. They'll see.
You've had 200 years to win one, and it hasn't happened yet, Justin. Keep on praying.
No. Just need to beat one of you 2 is all that needs to happen for y'all to shut up. That's what he's saying. Just need to beat one of you.
I'm not going to shove regardless because I won last year, so I'm not going anywhere.
You need to have a national championship
in the past,
for me to shut up.
Living in the past.
But You're living in the never.
Look, you can like Jedd Fisch all you want, Bill, but I honestly think that he left a gift horse for a donkey is what I think Jedd Fisch did. And like I said, the Arizona program going to the Big 12 in a conference that's looking for somebody to step up and take care of, take over as the top contender in that conference. He left that to go to Washington in a school that's going to be without a starting quarterback. All their star players have transferred out, and the recruiting class, their top commits have already decommitted. I mean, he literally left the perfect situation to go try to build something in rainy weather.
I hear you, Alex, but
Washington is a way better job.
Scare money don't make no money. You got to go to the bigger program, get your extra money, and I get it. This year is going to be tough for him, but if he recruits well, before Kalen DeBoer got to Washington wasn't this like powerhouse football team. Like, he had to build them up. He had to get Michael Penix Jr. out the portal. He had to develop Rome Odunze like while he was there. He had to develop McMillan and Jalen Polk and although Dylan Johnson. Like, these weren't guys that we were talking about before. Jedd's gonna have to do the same thing. Look at what he did at Arizona. We weren't talking about Fafita. We weren't talking about Fafita beforehand. We weren't talking about their receiver beforehand. If you coach your players and you get the right players to come into your teams, you're gonna be fine.
The difference is that DeBoer has got Penix to follow him, and nobody would follow Fisch. That's all I'm saying. No one would follow him.
But championships aren't won overnight.
This is such a one-off thing, though. You're leaving out the point. The quarterback and the wide receiver are best friends. Like, they didn't want to separate and go move their hometown. They're from there. Like, there's a lot of like. Listen, I get what you're saying, but to say, like I said, there's no way that you tell me Arizona is a better job than Washington. It's just not. It's not. He's going to the Big Ten. He's going to have a bigger presence in the Big Ten in a better conference than he would with Arizona in a lesser conference. And what's that Arizona team look like next year after all those kids are gone?
We have no idea.
They're going to go right back to being 5-7 every year.
If he wins a Big Ten championship, he is going to have either whatever job he wants to in the entire country, or he's going to have people wanting to come to Washington. So I get it. It's going to be a big jump. Expectations are definitely going to be higher at Washington. I also get it. It's going to be a tougher road to travel. And you got to face potentially Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, maybe Wisconsin. Michigan State won't be down forever. Like, when you have to face these teams year in and year out, like, it's definitely going to be a tough uphill battle for you. But at the end of the day, if you do your job, if he can replicate exactly what he did at Arizona, bring it over to Washington, and they have similar success where they're winning 8 or 9 games, and he finds that star quarterback, he finds a star wideout. if they're at Washington, that's going to mean a lot more than it would if they were at Arizona.
I get what you're saying. Just one man's opinion. I also hate Washington. So the second he went there, I already hated him. So it's cool.
Well, good thing is you won't have to worry about him this year too much. So
just once.
But that being said, those are the 4 new members. Obviously, we think USC is kind of on their way back, and the heritage and the tradition and the prestige they add to this conference, if they get back to full speed, is it's almost invaluable. Again, we just talked about Washington. I don't think Washington's down forever. UCLA, I think, is kind of a long road back. And again, to what we already talked about, and even kind of Dante's point, UCLA, I think, was a great add in regards to the overall. I mean, because again, if you look at their program, for championships, they win the Pac-12, not named football, they win a lot. So they add a ton of value to the Big Ten Conference and other areas. And then Oregon, obviously, with Dan Lanning and that team he's going to have for the next couple of years. So that being said, time to get into it. We've pushed it off enough. It's time for the Big East.
Oh, jeez, they're so tiny.
The Big East or the Big Ten. Why do I keep calling the Big East? Jesus Christ!
I don't know.
Big Ten.
You're ready for them to go. You're ready for UConn to join the Big 12.
I know. That's why it's on my mind too. Big Ten preview time. Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State schedule on here. I said this on Wednesday. I'm not going to change anything as of right now. I think this changes possibly for me a little bit after week 1 for one school, after week 2 for another. The other 2, I think, are kind of what they are. I think it's a 4-horse race. I think these are the 4 horses. And I think 2 of them have a little bit of a lead, going into the 3rd or 4th turn as of right now. Long season to go, see how people develop. But I think 2 teams are, positioned to be a little bit better than the other 2 as we sit here live on this show right now. Can it change? Yes. Will it change? Not sure. It looks like we're doing Oregon first.
Alex is hilarious.
Why? What's he doing?
What'd I do?
He put Oregon being first, of course. I get it. But then 2, I'm seeing the star by Iowa. Like, it just made me laugh right away.
Bro, it's a ranked opponent. You gotta put a star there.
You
gotta put a star there.
I
didn't
get
do
it, but
that
it just
because
made
I
me.
like Iowa.
It made me laugh right away.
Look, we're gonna cover Oregon's schedule first. And when I look at between these 4, the reason that we made this slide with the 4 is these are arguably the 4 top contenders for Big Ten championship. I think we can all agree with that comment. Like I said, I think when you look at all 4 schedules, I think Oregon probably has the easiest way. I mean, they have to go to Ohio State. Ohio State's coming to Eugene. We got to go to Michigan, and then we got to go to Wisconsin. But other than that, we only have 2 ranked opponents as of now on the schedule. I think Oregon's got the easiest path.
Don't disagree. I think they have the less room. I think they have the less margin of error outside of maybe Penn State as well, though.
Cottrell's making a real weird face right now.
I think I say this, if the Buckeyes come in there and beat you guys and you go to Michigan and lose, I think you guys are in a lot of trouble. And I mean a lot of trouble as in I don't think you're making the playoff. Because I don't think you have anything else on that schedule that's going to shout out, hey, you have to put us in the top 11 teams in the country.
2 top 10 losses. 2 top 10 losses.
You want them a top 10 win.
We're approaching 2023 territory again.
Yes.
With Oregon. And again, I've said this before. We saw how much they were liked by the committee last year. Not saying they didn't deserve it, but we saw how much they were liked last year, even after the 2 losses to Washington, which was a really good team. So I think they still would get in if they only had 2 losses at that point. I also think, going to playing the Civil War game week 3 of the regular season is definitely going to be different. Going to Oregon State is definitely going to be different there. I'm not saying that's going to be a loss for them, but I mean that's a huge game that can kind of just fall under the radar. Although it's a rivalry game, just because of the placement of it now in the season. So I think that one can get weird. And then the other 3 that you mentioned, I just don't know how you can look at this and say Penn State doesn't have the easiest road here. USC team who we think is going to be down. I get it. It's traveling across the country. Them going to Wisconsin, it's only going to be in October then. So I'm not saying that's going to be a gimme by any means. And I get it. They also got to play West Virginia week 1. But I'm just looking at this schedule. I guess they got 2 ranked games with USC and Ohio State. I don't think USC is going to be ranked by the time they get there. Even if they lose to Ohio State, win or lose that game, if they're 11-1, they're going to the college football playoff, and most likely going to the Big Ten championship game. So I just look at it, for me, just completely unbiased. I think Penn State has like a clear-cut, easiest road here to the college football playoff, especially because outside of those 3 that we have started, and I guess you throw in West Virginia as well, especially with it being week 1. But outside of that, there aren't any other games where I could be like, hey, maybe they could kind of get tricked up there, as opposed to like Ohio State, for example. It's a home game, but like Nebraska in that October slot, you don't know how good that team's going to be. Like, that could be like a weird, tricky game there. I mentioned Oregon State going to, Oregon having to travel to Oregon State early in the year. And then with Michigan, you just don't know what that team looks like. And they don't have necessarily like a tough slip-up game, but them having a Texas game non-conference, I think that adds to the strength of their schedule. So I look at it and say Penn State has the easiest road.
I don't disagree, and I call Penn State possibly being fool's gold, and I'm going to stand by that. I think that West Virginia game opening week in Morgantown, I think that's a tougher game than anybody wants to lead on. I think West Virginia can move the football. If they can stop anybody, remains to be seen. That's not an easy place to go play. It's not. I think that is a trickier game than I think a lot of people are just overlooking that game for what Penn State's going to bring in there, for what the new players they have on offense, offensive line. If for somehow they get in that game and they can't run the ball, we're going to see what Drew Aller is all about real quick. But I agree with Cottrell. I think overall, I think they have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten, followed by Oregon. I think Michigan and Ohio State are pretty close. But I called them fool's gold for a reason early this year. I think they could get into the playoff being 11-1 and sitting there being the 5 or 6 seed. And I think there's a chance they get smoked by somebody in the first round. Because they're not going to be battle tested. I think you'll need to know everything you need to know what that team is when they play Ohio State. If that's a close game, maybe they're for real. I think there's a chance Ohio State goes into Penn State, wins by 20. I firmly believe that as we sit here right now. I am not sold on Penn State's offense 100% by any means. Everybody can sit here and say what they want, and they have this, they have that. They have Drew Aller, who I like. I think he's great. They're replacing their top 5 pass catchers from last year. Top 5. Not like, hey, we lost our number 1 and we got 2 juniors they're ready to step. Top 5. Top 5. You have an offensive line that has issues for 3 straight years and is only returning 2 starters. And you have 2 good running backs. I don't know. That just doesn't scream to me a dominant football team. It doesn't. It could. And then you factor in their head coach. He's worth an L by himself every year. So Penn State, I think, has the chance to be very good. They are definitely in the show me category, though, for me personally. I don't know what you guys think. And then, that's not even talking about the defensive side of the ball, but they got to prove it to me. They got to go out and beat West Virginia. They got to hang in or beat Ohio State. And then I'll start being like, okay, this team's elite. Until I see that, I'm not just brandishing them some top, locked in top 8-9 team in the country this year. Because I just haven't seen enough from anybody that I just mentioned really in that conversation.
Well, here's the thing you said about Penn State is like you're not sure what the offense is going to look like. Well, come week 6 against USC at USC, we're going to have to see they're going to have some offense because a Lincoln Riley-led team is going to put up 30 points. So we're going to see what kind of defense, what their defense really looks like, and we're going to see if their offense can keep up with the high scoring offense. Because no matter what USC does, win or loss record, they're going to be able to put up some points. So I think week 6 is going to be the true tell sign of what kind of team Penn State's going to be. we're leading into their bye week, and then they're arguably the next two biggest games after that.
It's just not the Pac-12.
I mean, I'm way more.
No, but
sold.
we're gonna find out.
I'm way more sold on Penn State's defense than I am their offense.
Right, and we're going to see what that defense can do against. Like I said, USC is one of the best offenses year in, year out from the Pac-12 teams. So we're really going to see if that defense, what that defense can do. Miller Moss, if he's as big of a stud as he looked in the bowl game last year, USC could definitely be one of the leading national leaders in points per game. And I'm not, a USC fan, but that's what I saw from last year's bowl game.
See, the thing is, though, is that they lost a ton too, though. Like losing, they bring back Zachariah Branch, who I think he's going to be a stud this year as a true sophomore. But losing, they lost Brendan Rice, they lost Taj Washington, I believe. They lost Marshawn Lloyd. Obviously, they lost Caleb. Like they lost a ton of production on the offensive side of the ball. Not to mention, as good as we know Caleb is. The offense, I'm not going to say they were the reason why they, only won 8 games last year, but the offense didn't look like how I thought a Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley offense would normally look. So I think it will be different. And you saw what they look like against a Notre Dame team that had a really good defense. I think Penn State's defense will be really good there as well. I think that could be even though it's on the road, I think that could be a true welcome to the Big Ten moment for USC.
Don't disagree either. I mean, and again, Alex, I don't like to pile on with this, but it's Cottrell mentioned it, and I don't know when your coming to God moment's going to be with it this year, but it's going to happen. It's defense is different in the Big Ten. And again, we made jokes about it before about nobody plays.
Yes, and our defense was built by an SEC guy.
Oh, I couldn't stop Washington last year twice.
Yes, but this year, with the way we killed the transfer portal, our defense, arguably the best secondary ever. Not ever. That's maybe a little bit much. He could be the best secondary with the additions that he got in the transfer portal. Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me, dude!
Again,
you were crying when we landed. What was his name?
You don't even know his name.
Because you got me all worked up now. I'm all.
Jabbar Muhammad. Jabbar Muhammad. Yeah. Love Jabbar.
You were all on your
Guess what though? Guess what? Michigan has a DB that's better than them. Ohio State has 2 DBs that are better than them. That's the reality of it.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we had no problem throwing the ball in the national championship game last year. I'll just leave it at that. I will. I'm just telling you it's different. If you don't need to look any further, just look at how everything played out at the end of the year last year. You guys couldn't beat a Washington team twice. Washington went and beat the team that everybody thought was going to beat them in Texas because their defense didn't play well, and they went and played an elite defense and they got embarrassed in the national championship game. Not saying that's going to happen every week. I'm not saying that just because it's Michigan. I'm just telling you the level of defense per game on average is drastically higher in the Big Ten than it's the Pac-12. That's all I'm saying. It's a fact. Trell knows it. I know it. If you're being unobjectionable, it's just a different league, dude. It's a different league.
Well, we prepped in the offseason for a different league. We didn't prep for Pac-12 play. We prepped for Big Ten play, baby. So we're ready.
Nothing preps you for that until you get out there and get punched in the mouth.
Oh, my goodness.
Nothing prepares.
Every time Ohio State's been punched in the mouth by Michigan, they folded. So next topic.
Oh, I wouldn't say every time, considering that.
3 times? 4 times?
3. Okay.
3 times. 3 times. Okay, cool.
Give you 3, but I'm just saying, it's
You're
different.
Graduated classes.
It's different. It's different going to Wisconsin and playing at Camp Randall in November than it is going up to Wazoo playing Washington State or going up to.
You ever been to Wazoo, bro? Don't disrespect Washington State.
It's not Camp Randall. It's not Camp Randall.
This is where you get in trouble, Alex. This is where you get in trouble.
All right, next topic. Anyway, okay, cool. I actually have a question for you. Objectifyingly, whatever, say what you want to do. Cottrell, Bill, where do you think? I'm not going to comment on this, and we're not going to comment on your teams either. But Cottrell, Bill, where do you think Oregon, if they are slipping up, where do you think that slip up happens?
I think they go 10-2. I think they lose to Ohio State at home. and I think they lose to either Michigan or Wisconsin. I won't say both. I just think the way that the schedule is going to fall there, the travel going back and forth, East Coast, West Coast, I think it will be a lot. And I think, one of those two games I can see being another loss for them. Still like them to make the college football playoff. I still think they can't, just being completely honest, I still think they can win national championship, but I see two losses on the schedule. I think one for sure Ohio State, and then I just don't know if it's going to be at Michigan or at Wisconsin.
What about you, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think you being home is a huge advantage in that Ohio State game. I think if you win that game, I think that is a huge turning point / stepping stone for you guys this year. That's hey, we can get over the hump, and we're for real. If you beat Ohio State at home, I think the confidence that's going to put in that football team, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys run the table. Like I said, I'll be able to answer this a lot better for me after week 2. I think even going to Camp Randall, I think that's a tighter game. I think that's a tough game. I think you guys still just have more talent than Wisconsin. I'm on the same boat as Cotrello. I think Wisconsin is a team that's going to take a huge leap this year that nobody's talking about. I think Wisconsin's going to be pretty good this year. Unless you go up there and it's like -10, which it could be, so don't get me wrong. If it's -10 and like snowing or something, that game gets real interesting. If somehow we have, nice weather and it's only like 40 degrees or something like that, then I don't know. But I honestly think your floor is 10-2. And then I think you have a shot to run the table. I do.
I appreciate that. I like to hear that. Control, that's how you answer that question. It's your possible 3-loss bullshit. Okay.
I never said possible 3 losses. I said
you said 2.
You said 2.
Okay. You
I said 10-2.
I just am so used to you saying hateful things that I just reacted.
He's got your floor the same place I do.
Okay. No, Bill, you can't answer this. So Cotrell, this is for me and you, and I'll let you go first. Where do you think Michigan slips up this year?
I think this is the year we actually see. This is the crazy part. I don't know how good Sherrod Moore really is. I know he, won all of his games last year in the interim, but like this now being his program, I don't know if he's gonna be ready for that week 2 against Texas. So I'm probably leaning loss there, even though it's home game for them. I think they beat USC. Again, same thing. I think this is a 10-2, maybe a 9-3 game. I could see them losing to Oregon at home, but again, I think that could be one of Oregon's losses. I'll say a 9, and this is a 9-3. Nah, I'll go 10-2. This is a 10-2 Michigan team. I think they lose to Ohio State, and I think they lose to Texas.
Okay, new coach, new running back, new starting quarterback, 10-2. All right, cool. Yep. All right, so I got Texas.
That's taking some liberties there. Keep going. I'll let you finish up before I get into this.
I got lost to Texas. I got lost to Oregon, obviously, and then I got Ohio State. And I think Michigan State, is going to be a tougher game on everybody's schedule that we're not really talking about. New coach, they brought in a new quarterback, a lot of new offensive pieces. So Michigan State, I think, is going to play everybody really well this year, and that being a rivalry game. I think 9-3 is definitely a good, accurate assessment. And I think that the 3 losses does put them in a spot where they still can make the college football playoff. I think USC does finish ranked. So I think that win will look better. And I also think that a lot of these teams like Indiana, Fresno State might be a team that might be on the fringe of a college football playoff, depending how they do in their conference play. A lot of people talk about Boise State. I think Fresno State could be in that conversation, which a lot of people aren't really talking about. So I think 9-3, but I think with those 3 losses, I think that the resume of the teams they beat is good enough that they could get in the college football playoff with 3 losses.
Alex, I'm kind of glad that you mentioned Michigan State here as well, because I don't think this is going to be the year where they like full-fledged just like make it out the mud per se. But I do think Aiden Childs being there, coach from Oregon State.
Oregon
What's his
State.
name? Yeah,
I
can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but him going there is definitely going to make an adjustment for them. They also did hit the portal hard this year as well. So I think Michigan State will look a lot different this year. And I do think they're going to play a lot of teams hard. Might only end up with 6 wins, but I think this is going to be a Michigan State team that looks a lot different than what we've seen in years past.
I don't disagree with the Michigan State stuff. I think John Smith's a good coach. I think that cupboard was kind of so barren, though. I know he had a couple big names come in over the portal. They're going to be a year away. I agree. They're not going to be the team that got run over by everybody last year. I mean, we beat them 49-0. That's not going to happen this year. I agree. I think if they get bowl eligible, if they get to 6 wins and give those kids, could show those kids a reward for playing well and get them to a bowl game. That will pay dividends down the road for them. In the couple years to come, once he can really start recruiting, get a full class in there from freshman to junior. They recruited decently this year. Then obviously, continue to go with the portal, but they're I don't want to say firmly, but with what was added to the Big Ten, they were kind of always on the cusp of being the top tier of the Big Ten. I think they just kind of have to get used to living in the mid tier now. I think with Oregon, and obviously, like I said, I think USC is going to get their crap together eventually. It's going to be hard to beat, the 4 teams on here, USC. And again, I think Wisconsin's on their way back too. I think Luke Fickell will get that program back to the perennial, 9-10 win team that it usually is up there as well. So Michigan State is definitely not going to be a pushover, but I don't think Michigan State's beating anybody on this list right here this year. I'll say that. Objectively about Michigan, I think 9-3 is the floor. I think 9-3 probably still gets them into the playoff unless a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of teams, just don't lose in front of them. Which could happen, but I think with what we saw in the SEC already, in the Big 12, I just don't think you're going to have a bunch of 12-0 teams sitting here at the end of the year. I just think the schedules are too crazy. There's too many good teams this year. Texas is the game that I think is very interesting. I don't think this, I think it's weird that everybody is just piling on the Texas love this year, and I look at it from just pulling back and not even taking Michigan out of the equation. I don't think this Texas team is as good as last year. I don't. I think if you look at what they lost to the draft last year and what they had last year, that team last year was a better football team than this year. So I think they automatically assume, they're going to be a top 2, top 3 team, win the SEC, like Nick Saban said. I think that's kind of nuts. I've been a little bit, kind of, I don't want to say out on Texas, but again, you look at what they lost. They lost 2 first-round defensive linemen. They lost their best linebacker. They lost, their starting running back was going to go anyway, but then the guy that was going to replace him is gone. I know they still have Quinn Ewers. They lost two wideouts that are going to be really, really good NFL players. And I know they got replaced by guys, but they're guys that are unproven. Can they step up and fill the role? Absolutely. Isaiah Bond is a 5-star or 4-star kid. I'm not even
4-star.
4-star. Kid's got all the ability in the world. Great athletic. He's big. I'm not saying he's not a good receiver. He could be. Is he Xavier Worthy from last year? Is he, is he Mitchell from last year? I don't think he is yet. I just think between that and then the holes that the glaring holes they have on defense, I think that team needs to work into their schedule. I think it's nuts the amount of love that they're getting with some of the glaring holes they have. Like you look at Washington threw the ball at will on them last year, and and both those starting corners from last year aren't there anymore. You know, I think that game is very winnable for Michigan. If Michigan can win that game, I think it turns, it kind of turns the season for them. If they lose it, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't. I think they'll beat USC at home, and then their season comes down to Oregon and Ohio State. At Ohio State, as much as I would love to keep this curse alive of since we've been doing the podcast, Cottrell hasn't beat me. I don't think it continues this year. I don't. I think going to Columbus, that's going to be a hill a little bit too high to climb for us this year. But if we're walking into that game with only one loss, I think we're in really good shape. And if that's Oregon, so be it. But early November, I've been to games in Ann Arbor where it's 45 degrees, 50 degrees, and a little breezy and sunny and nice. I've been to games in November where there's a foot of snow on the ground already. That's not going to be an easy trip. It's just not. They will be up for that game. So I think 9-3 is their floor. I think 11-1 is their ceiling. If this team ran the table, I would sitting here, I'm telling you right now, I would be shocked. I would legitimately fall off my chair and be shocked.
Well, Alex, since Bill went over Michigan, I am curious. I already know what you're going to say about Oregon, but I'm curious to see what you think about the schedule.
The only game that worries me is week 2, if I'm being honest with you. You can laugh all you want, but I remember a team, maybe y'all remember when LeGarrette Blount punched a Boise State player in the face. Well, we were also highly touted that season as well and picked to be contending for the national championship. And we went to Boise State, and they took care of business, and they handled Oregon pretty handedly. So seeing them again on the schedule kind of brings back a little bit of PTSD from an Oregon team that I thought was going to contend for a national championship. I forgot what year that was. Maybe Justin, maybe you can let me know. So that game worries me a little bit. I do think we're going to take care of business, but that's a game. I think with the quarterback decision that just came out, what was the kid's name that they picked to be their starter over Malachi Nelson? Exactly. So I would think I'd be a little bit more worried if Malachi Nelson had been announced a starter. A September game against the Beavers, obviously in Corvallis, that's going to be a crazy game. Civil War games are always up in the air, and they love nothing more than upsetting an Oregon Ducks season. But the 12:30 game, and normally it's a Black Friday game on a Friday nighttime, raining, wind is going 35 miles per hour. Like it's got an aura to it. So a game in September is going to feel a little off. But being that Oregon State has lost a lot of their talented players to the portal, being that they're not even in a conference really this year, I don't think that's going to be an issue as well. Obviously, Ohio State coming to town, I think them being at Autzen is going to be what makes the difference. 2009, thank you, Justin. My senior year of high school, that's right. That was the worst. Anyway, the game against Ohio State at home, it's going to be at Autzen. I think that's going to be the difference maker. Playing against the Oregon Duck fans is going to be something that Ohio State has never done before, and they're going to see what it's like. Purdue, Illinois, obviously not strong teams in the Big Ten. The Michigan game, Bill called it, though. Like, we don't know what the weather's going to be like. I think that we do have a strong enough running attack where playing in the snow isn't going to hurt our offense, maybe points per game-wise, but I don't think as far as dominance it's going to affect. And same when we go to Wisconsin. And is it me or does Maryland feel like it should be an ACC team? Like, Maryland totally feels like an ACC team to me, but that's just me.
Well, they were.
They used to be.
Thank you. That's why I felt like that. When did they switch over to the Big Ten? I forgot.
Maybe like
2015, maybe.
I was gonna say 15, like eight to 10 years ago.
2015, Rutgers and Maryland came in the same year.
Yeah,
that's what it was. And then you got Washington to wrap it up, and it's going to feel good to see a W next to a Washington name this year because, like I said, the program's lost a lot of talent. New coach, first year. Ceiling, honestly, is 11-1. 12-0, though, is what I'm thinking actually happens. Big Ten champion.
All I'll say is this. I hope the rest of your team comes into Ann Arbor with that attitude that you have with a new running back. Like Donovan Edwards has been playing for 3 straight years. All that junk that if that's what you need to make it, make yourself feel cuddly and comfortable and confident, by all means do it.
Oh, they got the D3 Heisman winner. What are you talking
Jay
about?
Harris, bro.
They're gonna run all over.
Harris is a freaking
Yeah.
who's 6'2",
Who's Donovan Edwards? He was a backup
bro.
to Blake Corum last year. Donovan Edwards
Yeah.
is this nobody. They got this D3 Heisman kid that was playing schools in Kansas and in Idaho and
you got
and all
Jordan
these other
James
places.
and Whittington running down your throat with the speed, and then all of a sudden here comes third down, 3rd and 2, and you got a 6'2", 220 dude jamming it down your throat. I'm sorry, that is gonna. I mean, I'm getting excited.
It's great. It's great that football games aren't played on scales because I'm not gonna lie to you. These big boy schools over in the Big Ten, you're going to have linebackers that are 6'3", 250 pounds that run a 4.4. You're going to have safeties that are the same size. The running backs are all going to look the same. This isn't the Pac-12 anymore, Alex. Ohio State and Michigan have the same athletes on the
inevitable. Stop putting off the inevitable. You got to put yourself on mute. Bill, let's talk shit about Ohio State's schedule. Where are they going to lose?
Bill already told you that Ohio State's beating Michigan this year, so
I want to hear.
He's not going to be on your side.
So I'll go over Ohio State first. Listen, as much as we like to poke fun and everything, like it's hard to without getting personal or being funny about it. It is hard to trash what they do. They routinely pump out NFL prospects. They win football games, and they do their thing. I think they have 2 tricky games this year. If they were coming to Michigan this year, I would say it's a tricky game. I think at home, again, not talking shit, but I think at home and just the absolute amount of anger they have over the last 3 years, I just think they take care of business at the end of the year this year. Make no bones about it. Going to Oregon and going to Penn State are not easy trips. I said this on Wednesday. I think, and again, it'll probably make Cottrell cringe again a little bit, but I'm telling you from everything I've read, and I think based on personnel, what they're going to do, they have an absolute elite defense. They're going to have a top 5 defense. Michigan's going to have a top 5 defense. I think Ohio State's going to look a lot like Michigan last year. That's how I think. I don't think they'll be as run heavy, but I think it's going to be the same philosophy. It's going to be, we have 2 guys that can run the ball down your throat. And then once you prove you can stop that, we have a mobile quarterback that we're hoping can make the throws and make the plays when necessary to make big plays and score touchdowns and keep you off balance. That's literally Michigan from last year. And they have the people to do it. And I think that's what they're going to do. And I hate to say it. That's why I think when they go to Oregon, I think they're going to win. Because I don't think Oregon's prepared to stop that. And I think I've already said what I thought about Penn State. I think Penn State missed a huge opportunity to not make that a whiteout game and at least have that advantage behind them. They took the coward's way out and took it against Washington because they knew it was going to be a guaranteed win. So Ohio State gets the same pass that we got last year when Penn State, chose not to have the whiteout game against us. I think they go to Penn State and take care of business. I just do. I don't think Penn State can score enough to keep up in that game. And then I've already said that I think they beat us at home. So I think their floor is 11-1 probably, and I think their ceiling is 12-0.
Okay. So Bill, you just completely throwing out Michigan beating Ohio State. Completely just throwing that.
Listen. I'll say this.
Damn.
3 years ago, I thought it was kind of a perfect storm. And in the last 2 years, I firmly believe we were the better team. I did. I thought the way we played, and how good, and how good our defense was, especially last year. I just thought we were the better football team, and I think they went out and proved that. I think, again, I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it until they prove me wrong. But Ohio State took a very similar approach to what Michigan did last year. You look at all the kids that came back that were like, you know what? It does mean something for me to leave Columbus with a national championship. I can wait another year to go to the pros, rather than kids that are usually out of that program in 3 years. They have a lot of depth and they have a lot of legit senior leadership. It is very, very reminiscent of Michigan last year. There's so many comparisons. It's scary. And listen, Chip Kelly's going to, dolly it up a little bit, and they'll do Chip Kelly things here and there. Don't get me wrong, but you don't go out and get Junkins in the portal and not use them. Me and Cottrell have been talking about Donovan Edwards, Trayvon Henderson since I've known the kid, since I met him. We've had the comparison and back and forth of what they are. They have 2 absolute elite top 7 or 8 running backs in the country. They're going to run the football. If you want to point it, if there's one question mark about Ohio State this year, it's their offensive line, and it's not as a big a question mark as say like Penn State's is. And you have 2 kids that are going to run the ball that will still make up for some of the slack when they're not great. So, like I said, I think the quarterback has all the pressure in the world on that team, because I think he's firmly in the J.J. McCarthy seat. I think that's where he is. I think they have an elite defense that's going to keep them in every single game, probably win them a game here or there. I think they have Emeka back on the outside. They have 2 great running backs. What's the new kid coming in wide receiver wise?
Jeremiah Smith,
who people are already saying looks better than anybody they've ever seen in the program. That's about as high as praise you can give for a kid when you look who's come out of that program in the last 4 years. They are if they don't win it this year, I don't know when they win it. I'll say that. And that's not me blowing smoke up Cottrell's ass. If they are not in the championship game, then maybe you do start looking at maybe, I don't want to say that's Ryan Day, but at some point you just got to change something. This is hands down the best team that he's ever had across the board. So if it doesn't get done this year, I don't know when it gets done.
Chip Kelly gonna Chip Kelly it somehow.
Maybe.
When I look at Ohio State's schedule, obviously starting off with some weak opponents, so obviously 3-0 start there. No, no ands, ifs, or buts about that. Honestly, like I said, I really wish that Iowa could have done something in the transfer portal quarterback-wise, because their defense deserves
quarterback. That's what they did. They stole our backup.
Yeah, 2 years ago, dude threw for 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and like 500 yards last year before he got hurt his knee or whatever, and he's back. And I think in their scrimmage, he threw like another 3 interceptions. Like, I thought with the new offensive coordinator, I thought that Iowa would be a much tougher opponent if they could actually score some damn points, because their defense is definitely going to be elite again this year. But that's going to be a W, unfortunately. Oregon, they're losing. Nebraska is going to be a tough game, and Penn State, I could see that being a 3-point game. That with 2 defensive juggernauts, both with outstanding running backs in the backfield. They both have 2 outstanding running backs in their systems. So I think that's going to be a lower scoring game. So that could be kind of up in the air. But yeah, Bill, I definitely agree. I think their ceiling is 11-1 and their floor is 10-2. If I'm looking at their schedule, the way it lines up.
So
I think they beat Michigan this year.
All right. So then, where do you think their second loss is? I'm assuming you're saying you're beating them. So if you're saying they beat us, where is their second loss?
If they get a second loss, it's going to be Penn State, and it's going to be because it's lower. It's a low scoring game. We saw what Drew Aller did to him last year, or did not do to them last year. He had a 42% completion percentage. They did not use him well at all. I think with a year under his belt, I think he's learned in playing in those close games. I think Drew Aller can put him over the top in that game. And only reason I'm even saying that is because Penn State's defense is probably going to be, as we all agree, top 10 in the country. So, again, those long-standing rivalries, anything can happen. I think Penn State is where they trip up and get their second loss. I think they still – well, actually, I'm not going to tell you who I think is going to be in the conference championship game, but I think that's where the second loss comes in.
All right. Cottrell, anything before we move on?
Big thing for me, I won't go too far in depth here because I think the expectations really They are what they are. Like I'm falling right in line with everybody else here. I think this is probably, when we look back at it, as far as like players that get drafted and or play in the NFL, this is probably going to be that team that we're talking about, like all time roster wise, like how you look back at like LSU and all the players they sent to the league from that 2019 team. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go be 2019 LSU this upcoming year, but as far as talent goes, I think this may be the most talented team in the program's history. I think they send that many people to the NFL in the future here. But with that said, I think just looking at the schedule, I actually really liked they went weaker with the non-conference here. No need to
Of course you do.
exert yourself too early when you got three big time programs that I think are all going to be in the college football playoff this year. So I like that. I think they just have to remain focused on the mission. I think they get lucky that after beating Oregon on the 12th of October, they got a bye week right after that before facing Nebraska. I think if that game was like the week after, you could see like a big kind of like exhale kind of thing from them after traveling on the road and then getting a young, hungry Nebraska team. So I love that bye week happens there. Other thing I love about the schedule is the fact that Penn State decided not to have it be a whiteout. You know, Bill already alluded to it at this point. I think that is a huge, huge advantage for Ohio State. I think it's a game Penn State can still win, but you saw it last year with Michigan. I don't think anyone on that Michigan team looked worried about traveling to Happy Valley at noon. So I think Ohio State can kind of come in with that same mindset. And you know, when things get tough, like I'm sure that stadium is still going to be rowdy and things like that, but it's not going to have that night atmosphere. It's not going to be the same atmosphere as what it would be for a whiteout. And to end the year, obviously you got the Michigan game at home this year. I think it's put up or shut up time with all that Michigan lost and what we have coming back. Bill already alludes to this as well. There's a lot of kids that ultimately have not either played a national championship or beaten Michigan that are on this roster right now. And that hasn't been the case in a really long time. So I think it does matter to the kids that are in that program. And I think that is why a lot of them came back. It's a home game for them. It's going to be Ryan Day versus Sharon Moore. Get it? It was that matchup last year, but Jim still had all the play calling and all that stuff throughout the week. So a little bit different circumstances this year compared to last year. That is a job altering game right there. If you can go 11-1, you lose that game to Michigan, you are quite literally in a spot that if you don't win a national championship, you're going to get fired. I don't care how far you go. If you lose to Michigan again for the fourth year in a row and you don't come home with a national championship, you're going to be fired. On the flip side of that, if you beat Michigan this year, don't win a national championship, they're probably going to give you some reprieve there because it's like, hey, you're still on the recruiting trail. You're still doing what you're supposed to do there. You got the win against Michigan. While we won a national championship because of how great this roster is, it's okay. We'll give you a pass for now because you at least took care of, the first things first there. So I think this is going to be big for Ryan Day here. And I think it's also very telling that his Big Ten record at this point, Jim Harbaugh was his kryptonite. If we're just looking at it objectively, Jim Harbaugh was his kryptonite. He was 1-3 against Jim Harbaugh. He is 40-0 against everybody else in the Big Ten. I think the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Big Ten.
I mean, everyone else is still here. Ryan Day, well, I should say, not just Ryan Day. Ohio State's 9-1 against Oregon in their history. So, I mean, you could throw them in there as well.
What happened the last time? Who's on the win streak right now?
Yeah, what happened when it mattered though? Who hoisted the trophy when the game mattered? It was cool. You got the cute. I think it was like a week 2 win or whatever. Whatever that was. CJ Stroud's second start of his career. That's cute and all, but we hoist the trophy. You still have no clue what that feels like. So, but just tying it back into Ohio State here, I think the sky is truly the limit for this team. I think it's just going to be a matter of what they ask of Will Howard, and then ultimately what this offense looks like with Chip Kelly. Because they got weapons everywhere. So I'm curious to see what this offense looks like. Bill, I love the idea of just, having the spearheaded attack of Henderson and Judkins there. But I also can see him, just because of the receivers they have, airing it out a ton as well. So, Alex, you got the taste of Chip Kelly before, so you know what that looks like when you have, the stars all over. He spreads it out everywhere and gets super creative there. So I'm excited to see what the offense looks like, but this is very much, by true definition, a put up or shut up season from Ohio State.
Chip Kelly's Oregon offense was arguably one of the funnest offenses to watch that I've ever seen, college or pro. It was just, you never knew whose hands the ball was going to end up in. You didn't know if it was going to be running back, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end. You didn't know anything. You could be handing off to a tight end on a shovel. Like, he has so many things that he could throw in his offense. And yes, Ohio State does have a lot of weapons for him to use. So the sky literally is kind of the limit to him, or especially when he has a mobile quarterback, where obviously last year that wasn't the case. I'm not going to say Ryan Day was talking crap on last year's quarterback. We're not going to mention right now. But he did say that the one thing he liked about bringing in Will Howard was that he's mobile, and he wants to have every Ohio State quarterback have the ability to get out of the pocket and make something happen. So having that capability with Chip Kelly's offensive mindset is also going to be a huge weapon for them. So look for Will Howard to also possibly have the most rushing yards in his career this year, just because of all the weapons. They're not going to be having a QB spy on him all the time as they're double teaming Ekbuka on the outside or having somebody watch Judkins in the backfield. I think he may have the most rushing yards in his career this year, if I'm making my bold claim on Ohio State this year. Let's talk about Penn State.
I think the biggest thing with them is going to be if somebody can match up with them across the board a little bit and make him throw the ball and keep him in the pocket and stop the run. And that's a huge task. I mean, it's a big task. It's a lot. So I agree. To Cottrell said, I think you guys will definitely be a little bit more vertical than we were last year, obviously. But then again, like, we also threw the ball more than people think we did, because people just think we threw the ball 4 times a game, or who never watched the Michigan game. I'm not going to mention any names, but it's I think if he never has to win you a football game, then I think you guys are in really good shape. Like, really good shape. I'll leave it at that. And I think the odds are that you guys are good enough that they could probably play within the system and do that. Hate to say it, but it's just where I think we are. So let's get to Penn State. Already talked about the first game a little bit, West Virginia. I think it's a very tough game. I think people are overlooking that game. I think it's crazy. Vegas would agree. That game opened around 11 and a half. It's all the way down to 8 and a half. People are coming in crazy with West Virginia money. Morgantown is no joke. That is a college town through and through. That place will be rocking for that game. If they do not have a specified offensive game plan and Drew Aller does not play well, they will come home from that game 0-1. I'll say this. I know everybody's happy about the new offensive coordinator. I get it. What he ran at Kansas, he can't run with Drew Aller at Penn State. He's not Jalen Daniels. He's not. And I'll say this. Again, I like Drew Aller. I hate to say it. I wish he went somewhere other than Penn State. I don't know how else to say it, more politely than that. I think Penn State's failed Drew Aller. I really do. He's on his third offensive coordinator in 3 years now. They've yet to get any kind of weapons on the outside to help him. He's got 2 great running backs behind him, and that's it. The kid was, one of the prizes of that recruiting class. Ohio State wanted him. Michigan wanted him. Everybody wanted him. He went to Penn State, and I think that program and James Franklin have just utterly failed him. I really do. I know that sounds harsh, but proof's in the pudding. If you watched, you want to know why Drew Aller struggles? Go watch the Ohio State game last year and go watch the Michigan game last year. When he played 2 elite defenses and he had kids that could not get open, watch how he played. And it wasn't his fault. That's what they have to deal with right now. But that being said, I hope they beat West Virginia. Everybody thinks I'm this huge anti-Penn State fan, and I'm not. I literally root for them. Like this year, I'll root for them every game because they don't play Michigan. I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State at home. I don't. I'm on record saying if that game was a whiteout game, I think could have been a different story. Just the emotion of that place at night could keep those kids in that game. I think their schedule's light, though. I think if they beat West Virginia, the only team they probably lose to is Ohio State. And like I said, I think their floor is 10-2. That's their floor. I think they're. If you want to tell me if you think they can beat Ohio State, upset Ohio State, then their ceiling's 12-0. I don't think they have a loss anywhere else. So I'll say 11-1, 10-2 at the worst. I think they make the college football playoff. I think they're going to host somebody. I could see like Ole Miss having to go there, and I think Penn State's kind of fool's gold this year. Could be wrong. Would love to be wrong. Again, I don't root against them. I'm just telling you from somebody who watches a shit ton of college football and what I know they have coming back, and just like I'm objectionable with my team, Ohio State, Oregon, anybody else. I think they have holes, and that offense, what they're going to come in this season with, just does not give me any kind of confidence that Penn State's going to be some offensive juggernaut. And I believe in Drew Aller, but I don't believe in James Franklin. Never have.
Here's the one thing that Penn State has that Ohio State, Michigan, and even Oregon doesn't have, and that's a quarterback with more than 1 year in the system. Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon all have first year in the system quarterbacks. Obviously, Michigan, did they announce as Alex Orji as a starter, right?
Not yet. It's a rumor, but I mean, again, he's been in the system since he's been on campus. It's been the same system since he's been there. He'll be a first-year starter.
That's what I mean. Like first-year starter with a new team is what I'm saying. So Penn State has returning quarterback. What they did against Ohio State last year is they lost by 8. Drew Aller threw the ball 42 times. They had Katron Allen, Nick Singleton in the backfield. Those two are two elite running backs. There's no reason in hell Drew Aller should be throwing the ball 42 times in a one-possession game. He didn't throw one interception, only completed 18 of those passes. They're going to, with a new offensive coordinator from Kansas, as Bill had mentioned earlier. What did Kansas do well? They ran the ball. And I think that's what they're going to do a lot more this year. I think they're going to be a lower scoring. The offense will be a lower scoring as far as compared to Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State. But I do think that their defense is the difference. I like Penn State this year. Bill's right. They are kind of like fool's gold. But with a new offensive coordinator and what I think he's going to run offensively, they're going to be running the ball probably 60 to 65% of the time this season. I think which is going to open up things for Drew Aller. I think he's going to have a better completion percentage than he did last year. Finished at 59%, but had 4 games under 50% last season, so he's got to improve on that. USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State, that's a tough 3-game stretch. The bye week between USC and Wisconsin, I think, is huge. I think you're right, Bill. I think one loss. I think one loss might be their floor, and I think their floor might be 11-1, and their ceiling could be 12-0. Looking at the schedule.
If I'm being honest, I think their floor is 11-1. I think the only game that I could see them really losing would be the home game against Ohio State, which is, I think, if that was like Bill said, if that's a night game, I'm worried a lot more about it than I would be for a noon kickoff. A lot of people are talking high on West Virginia, and I get it. West Virginia is going to be a good, unranked team that no one's talking about. That's probably going to be ranked towards the end of the year. I believe they are coming off of a 10-win season last year. Somebody fact check that for me. But they bring back a lot of production as well. So I think that West Virginia game can be tough, especially like right out the gate. But with that said, I also think Penn State hears all this noise coming from that game. Like, it's no secret that a lot of people are, leaning West Virginia's way or like the way that the spread looks and things like that. Like, people are putting Penn State on upset alert, and they've been hearing about it all summer. So I think that Penn State will be game. They're going to take care of business there. And then they don't really have to worry about anything else until, a month later, basically, when they got to see see USC, and I don't think that game's going to be what a lot of people see so far with them. So I truly think their only real test is going to be Ohio State, and that's at home. They could somehow find a way to pull out that game and win that. I think they are locked for the Big Ten championship game, if that's the case. But I truly think this Penn State team this is the year where they put it all together. I'm a big believer in Drew Aller. I said it on Wednesday's show on Wire to Wire. I think Drew Aller is going to be a first or a second round quarterback in next year's NFL draft. I think he has that kind of talent, and you're going to finally see him put on display this season.
All right.
Listen, I'm all in on the Aller stuff. Again, I'm not saying anything negative about them because of him. I think everything that happens around him is in spite of him, and that's why I say what I say. I think Penn State has failed him terribly. To finally get your hands on, a 5-star kid, like I said, that picked Penn State over everybody. That kid had offers from everybody, and then just not do what you need to do around him is a tragedy. He absolutely will go in the first or second round because he's got a cannon of an arm. He's a big guy. He has every tool that you want as an NFL quarterback. So I agree with Cottrell on that. It's just going to be a matter of what he looks like this season, and what they can figure out offensively. So I will be very curious to watch that game Saturday.
It's going to be a real tight, Big Ten race. If everything turns out how we want or how we're thinking it's going to, this is going to be a really tight top 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten this year.
Well, it's time to
pick.
For.
I think it's funny, Cottrell. I heard somebody talk about this earlier. I don't think they would do it. I don't, just because the game matters too much. But there was somebody saying, like, if Oregon and like Michigan were tied at 9-2 and you guys were 10-0 and already clinched into the game, knowing you have to play, if Michigan wins or loses, you have to play them again the following week. If you would sit people or not show stuff, and it's
absolutely fucking not.
I agree because of the game, because of what it is, but it's, again, I hate to say it, we're going to have these conversations down the road with other conferences and other things.
Oh yeah, with Clemson or Florida State. Florida State has the last 3 games of the season not be conference games.
But the thing is, though, is that if you just take care of business and you win your conference, you're going to get the bye week anyway. So why? I don't know why you would shortchange it.
It's more. I get it. I think the point was more like, hey, don't show them anything you're probably going to run the following week or anything you had in store. If you had, it's kind of what we talked about before. Like, hey, you have guys that are a little banged up. Like, hey, let's give them a week here. Let them play next week, and assuming, like you said, we take care of business, they get another week off anyway. Versus, risking something going crazy or haywire, knowing that you're already locked into the Big Ten championship game. Like I said, with us playing the last week every year, I don't think that would ever happen with us between our 2 teams. But that conversation is going to happen eventually. It's going to happen eventually because somebody's going to do it. I don't know how long it'll take, but there will be a team somewhere that'll be like, hey, we're locked in. We play next week for the bye anyway. So what's the difference? Like, I'm going to rest guys and not show somebody what we're going to do, and then be able to have everything at our disposal the following week. It's going to be crazy. We have a lot of strategy in it, which is fun. But let's go prediction time. We'll do predictions, then we'll do Heisman, and then we'll do Eliminator, and then we will get out of here probably on time, which will be nice. Alex, you can go first because I know you're just chomping at the bit here.
To say Oregon and another team that's not on this list.
Well, maybe that, but I just want to give him the first opportunity.
Here's the thing:
to say the Oregon Ducks are going to win everything.
Here's the thing. Okay, so these are obviously the 4 teams that we think are the top contenders. They're the 4 highest ranked teams in the conference. Obviously, they deserve to be talked about. They deserve their roses. There is a team, though. I think we talked about it once or twice, and I may have commented about it on Wire to Wire, but it kind of went ignored, as does most of my amazing takes. But yes, obviously, I do think Oregon is going to make it into the Big Ten championship. If I don't think that that's a homer pick either. I think that is 100% a possibility of going to happen. Um, Being one of the best offenses in the country, one of the fantastic defense bringing back this year. The Big Ten, like I said, is a different ball game, as you guys say. But guess what? So is Oregon Duck football, and I think we're going to bring our brand and put a stamp on it in the Big Ten. I think we're going to make it to the Big Ten championship this year. And a team that we haven't talked about has quite an easy schedule and quite an easy path. They're called Iowa. A team named Iowa, my man. They only have one ranked team that they're playing this year, and that's Ohio State in week 5? So if they lose in that game, that's a one-loss team. If Ohio State loses 2 in the conference, which is definitely possible, I don't think Iowa has a very easy enough schedule to run the table. I think this might be an Oregon-Iowa Big Ten championship. Big Ten championship this year. I think it's going to be Oregon and the underdog Iowa, not because Iowa is better than Ohio State, not because Iowa is better than Michigan, and not because Iowa is better than Penn State. Their schedule aligns so well for them that even if they lose to Ohio State, as long as they find a way to score more than 15 points a game, their defense is going to allow less than 12. There are people talking right now that Iowa's defense is better than last year's defense. Their secondary is better than last year's secondary, who lost Cooper DeJean to the NFL, Philadelphia Eagles. Is he going to start this year? Not to go off topic, do you know if he's starting this year, Cooper?
He's probably not going to start. He's going to make the team. I don't think he's going to start.
Okay. So I think, and like I said, I'm going to have the craziest pick of the day, but I do think that the Big Ten championship, and when it happens, y'all are going to be like, damn, I'm betting on everything Alex says. I think the Big Ten.
See, that's
so on par for Alex and Oregon quality.
Yeah. See, not even Restream didn't even want to hear the rest of what Alex had to say.
You started about Iowa, averaged 9 points a game. You're telling me you put them in the Big Ten championship game. Nonsense.
He's talking about them losing to Ohio State. Well, guess what? If Iowa is losing to Ohio State and they got a head-to-head, I mean, you already said that you're thinking that Ohio State's going to go 11-1. So guess how that tiebreaker works, buddy. But anyway, let's get back to planet Earth here.
Let's for shits and giggles being you till he comes back. I need to look up Iowa's schedule here. All right, here we go. Let's do this. Me and you. All right. All right. They open with Illinois State. Okay, that's a win.
Yep.
Iowa State at home.
Probably a win, but I mean, the way that game goes, I don't know.
Correct. I'll say a win, but I'm with you on that one. At home against Troy.
Win.
On the road, Minnesota.
Win,
but I think it's a tricky game.
Okay.
On the road against Ohio State.
I think we can agree loss there.
L. Home against Washington.
That's probably going to be a win.
Now to what we were talking about earlier. On the road against Michigan State.
This is a very losable game for Iowa. Agreed. I can see Michigan State scoring 20 points in that game.
Agreed. Home against Northwestern.
Win.
Yeah, they're going to be really bad this year. Like, really bad. Like, they're going to be like Indiana bad this year. Home against Wisconsin.
That's a very losable game as well. I know Wisconsin's not ranked. I think they will be by the end of the year. I think that's personally, I would probably say L, even though they're at home.
On the road at UCLA.
Win. I don't think UCLA is that good this year.
Agreed. On the road against Maryland.
I think Maryland takes I don't want to say a step back because they weren't that good last year, but new quarterback in there. Talia's finally gone.
Yeah.
I think they take a step back. I think that's an L. I mean, a win for Iowa.
Agreed.
Sorry.
Final game of the year. Home against Nebraska.
I'm going L there.
Yes, I mean that's possibly 4.
Oh, you guys talk about Iowa's schedule right now?
Well, we would wait for you to reboot your AOL, so you'd come back in here.
AOL. No, I just jotted off just because I didn't want to hear y'all talk shit about my Austin prediction.
Yeah,
we didn't even hear your prediction.
Yeah, it cut out right when you were talking about Iowa.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord.
Jerk.
We didn't have to finish that nonsense.
What did you guys hear me say? I want to make sure you guys heard it all.
Offense, Kirk Ferentz, ethics, all that stuff.
No, you guys going over Iowa's schedule right now, though?
Yeah, you want to go through it real quick? Because me and Cottrell kind of agree on this wholeheartedly all the way through.
I'll go through it fast. Okay, Illinois State, obviously, dub.
Yep.
Iowa State, dub.
Yep.
Troy, dub.
Yep.
Minnesota, that's a win.
Tight game, though.
Ohio State, arguably lost. We'll say loss.
Arguably?
Arguably lost. This guy?
Here we go. Keep going.
It's only Iowa's only plus 1,100 for that game right now. I'm just saying.
Only plus 1,100. What?
Yeah, I know.
Washington, that's a win.
Agreed.
Okay. Michigan State, win.
L.
Really? Okay. You think Michigan State's an L? Okay. Northwestern, win.
Agreed.
Win. Wisconsin in Iowa, win.
L.
Tough. I think it's L too. Keep going.
I think Tyler Van Dyke throws 3 interceptions, but okay. UCLA, dub.
Win.
Agreed.
Maryland, win.
Agreed.
Nebraska, win. Possible loss, though. It's possible loss. Now, if they don't beat Nebraska, that's 1 loss. They're in the Big Ten championship. No tiebreakers to worry about.
If they lose to Nebraska.
If they beat everybody else. I mean, you were
the glaring Ohio State game.
What's more likely? Iowa going 10 or 11-1, or 11-1, or an Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State all going with each having 1 loss. Like but 2 of our teams are going to have 2 losses this year. That's not even up for.
I disagree.
It's
very possible that's not the case.
Yeah, it could happen. We could lose to Texas. We could beat you. You guys could beat Ohio State, and then chaos for the final week then, because that game wouldn't matter then.
I'm saying when I look at the schedule and the tiebreakers, I honestly think Oregon and Iowa is a completely legitimate matchup in the Big Ten championship. Iowa's made 2 Big Ten championships in the last 3 years. They can make it 3 back-to-backs, and like I said, that defense deserves. The defense deserves a better offense. The offense has not shown signs of improvement. So this is a very bold choice, and I understand that. When you look at the schedule and what they were able to do with arguably less, this is a team that can make it to the Big Ten championship.
Here's what you have to remember. They came out of a weaker division 2 of the last 3 years. They didn't play Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State.
They don't either. They don't either, except for Ohio State.
Hold on. Let me finish. What happened both times they got into the Big Ten championship game?
I didn't say they were going to win it.
And they faced an elite team.
Didn't say they were going to win it, did I?
We know they're not going to win it in your book.
They got boat raced.
Right.
There's no shot they're beating Ohio State.
And they have the same caliber schedule that they had the last couple of years. Like, it is weak team after weak team after weak team. And someone else already said it in the chat earlier that Iowa is going to make it.
Alex, but to your point, though, as weak as it is and as weak as it always is, when have you ever seen an Iowa football team in modern day be 11-1 or 12-0?
Well, last year they were 10-2 last year.
They were 9-3, I think.
And then they lost in the Big Ten championship game, and then they lost in their bowl game against Tennessee. They got boat raced when they faced two normal teams.
I'm not talking about bowl games. I'm not talking about what's going to happen in the Big Ten championship. I'm saying who is going to get there.
Here's what I'll give you. Minnesota's a tricky game on the road.
Minnesota beat them last year.
Yeah. We already talked about how improved Michigan State's going to be. They play them in the middle of the year, so they'll at least have a couple games under their belt. Not saying they lose that game, but again, Spartan Stadium is not the easiest place in the world to play. What was the other one?
Nebraska.
Ohio State. And then Nebraska, who under Matt Rule, they were definitely better last year. They already named Raiola their starting quarterback. He's going to have 11 games under his belt at that point, assuming he's still starting and they're healthy. That Nebraska game at the end of the year will be a dogfight, I'm telling you. Yeah,
for sure. I do like Nebraska. I do like what he's building at Nebraska. And I think Dylan Raiola is coming into a great situation.
And they got to play Wisconsin, too.
Yeah, that one just happens to be in Iowa. So, but that's what I got. I got Oregon and Iowa in the Big Ten championship. And as the season goes on, and every time Iowa knocks a W onto their onto the schedule, I'm just gonna make a little list over here. Just keep track right here, and I'm also gonna have an under column that's for like how many unders hit, because that's gonna be the bet of the year is Iowa under every single game.
All right.
What do you guys think, though? What do you guys Big Ten championship picks?
You want me to go? Or you want to go?
It doesn't matter.
I'll go quick. I said as we sit here, I'm being honest with you. I think Oregon and Ohio State are the two best teams in the Big Ten right now. I think that's what your championship game is going to be. Not buying into the Iowa junk. I still think Wisconsin's a year away. Michigan State's probably 2 years away. Nebraska's kind of on the rise, but they're not in this conversation either. I think Penn State has the better chance to be the spoiler over Michigan right now because of their schedule so much lighter. But like I said, week 2, we somehow beat Texas, then I think all bets are off. But that being said, for the pick that I have to make right now, I'm picking Ohio State and Oregon. I think they're the two best rosters in the Big Ten right now. I think they're the two best teams in the Big Ten right now. So I'm taking that as my championship game, and I'm ultimately taking Ohio State to be the Big Ten champs this year.
And then for me, got Ohio State going to the Big Ten championship game. I think ultimately, they finished the regular season perfect at 12-0. I can't see them losing potentially at Penn State, but like I said before, and I keep saying it, that game doesn't scare me as much with it being at noon. As far as on the other side, I think the scheduling really mattered a lot for me in this. My pick on the other side is going to be Penn State. I think Penn State has a very easy schedule, and if they have a chance to beat Ohio State, like we could be looking at a 12-0 Penn State team here. And I think for Oregon, them like with their schedule, I get it, they get Ohio State at home, but I think Ohio State's the best team in the conference. They have to go to Michigan and they have to go to Wisconsin in November. I think that's
if I had one way or every time you guys said that.
One way or another, I think between those 3 games, those are going to be 2 losses there. And I think with Penn State's schedule, I'd be looking at the Ohio State game and most likely the West Virginia game to start the year is like the two losses there potentially for them. And I think it's more likely that Penn State ends up 1-1 within those as opposed to Oregon on the other side. And then as far as Michigan goes, I just think Michigan kind of set themselves up for failure unintentionally. Scheduling Texas week 1, I know that's out of conference, but I mean that's a lot to go through there. And then you have the luxury, I guess you could say, of facing Oregon and Ohio State, 2 teams that, I think we all can agree that we think are the 2 best teams in the conference here. So I think it's fell on a bad year for Michigan's luck with their schedule, and especially a year after they lose as much as they do. So ultimately, I like Ohio State versus Penn State in the championship. I like Ohio State to beat Penn State in a very tough matchup. I think it looks a lot different than whatever you see the first time around.
If I'm Ohio State and I go to Oregon and beat Oregon, you couldn't do it because you wouldn't know yet. But I would almost go to Penn State and lose on purpose.
That would be insane.
What?
Yep. Knowing you're probably gonna beat Michigan at home, that game would matter, and then you would guarantee you would keep Oregon out of the Big Ten title game. It would be funny.
Just screw Oregon.
Yeah,
that's all y'all care about. Man.
Nah, it's gonna happen anyway.
You'll be one of us. You'll be one of us soon. I'm not gonna lie. Spoiler alert. Going in 2025, Oregon's probably gonna pick to win the conference next year. Just where they're at. I just don't think I've never been a big believer in Dylan Gabriel. Told you guys last year I picked the upset when it was at that time it wasn't really an upset, but Texas beating Oklahoma, like when that happened. Well, that'd have been a couple years ago. But whatever. I've always been down on Dylan Gabriel and just never been a big believer.
Well, he's 8th in passing, so I mean passing yardage, and he's about to probably be number 2 before he ends his career.
He's 27. He should be.
He's not 27, bro. He's the same age as Will Howard.
He's not the same age as Will Howard. He's a year older than Will Howard.
6 months older.
He's a year older than Will Howard.
He is not a year. It's less than a year.
I think Will Howard.
We
is
did this.
20,
We had this conversation.
I think Will Howard's 22. Dylan Gabriel is 23.
Yes, because of
24
like a
this year.
6 month. Okay, Will
It's a
Howard's.
year.
What's that? I don't know. Anyway. All right, so you had Ohio State and Penn State in your championship. I had Oregon, Iowa, and Bill had Ohio State, Oregon.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Let's click over to Heisman picks here. It's going to be Homer City here, I think.
It totally is. 100%.
All right. I got Uncle Dylan Gabriel, so you can go over that, Alex. I'm assuming that's your pick.
No, I picked Donovan Edwards. We're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, Dylan Gabriel, he's right now he is currently the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, replacing Bo Nix. We saw what he was able to do in the Oregon Duck offense. Dylan Gabriel is currently number 8 all-time passing yards. Probably before I just said that. Probably before he's all said and done this year, he'll be number 2 on that list. He has so many weapons around him. Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, the running backs. He got 4 or 5 running backs that are going to see the field every game. They can catch in the backfield, that can pass block, and they can run like crazy, which is going to give him time in the pocket. Honestly, I said Dylan Gabriel's probably the best quarterback in college football this season. He's going to show that with the numbers. He's going to show that with the Heisman Trophy at the end of the year. He said he's only thrown 7 interceptions once in his career. That was his freshman year. Bo Nix was the precipice of efficiency last year. I think that has to do with Dan Lanning's offense. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to fit into that scheme just nicely. I think that he's going to continue the season that Bo Nix had last year, except for this year he's going to end it holding the Heisman Trophy in New York.
I just have one question.
Mm-hmm.
What did Bo Nix win?
I said the difference being he'll end up winning the Heisman this year.
I keep hearing Bo Nix's name like thrown all over this. Like the guy won the national championship in the Heisman last year, and he
didn't beat one ranked opponent last year.
It is a very similar situation. A transfer coming into an Oregon offense. I'm comparing similarities and how Bo Nix was able to skyrocket his game, and Dylan Gabriel's going to be able to do the same damn thing.
Alex, I got your back here because I actually think that of everybody in the Big Ten, I think Dylan Gabriel is going to have the best opportunity to win the Heisman. I think with the system that Oregon likes to utilize, I think that Dylan Gabriel's numbers are going to be there. And to be honest, I think they're going to, run the score up on the Sisters of the Poor schools. I think they're going to score 60s against your Idahos and, even some of the teams in the Big Ten, Indiana and Purdue's of the world. So I think he gets big time numbers from that. And, Dan Lanning has no problem running up the score there. I'm not even saying he's like as a bad thing. I'm just saying like in general, like he will stay aggressive throughout the entire game. And, those numbers can definitely get inflated there. So I think Dylan Gabriel has the best opportunity of anybody in the Big Ten there. So I definitely agree with you there, Alex. I think the one thing that stops him, though, is that, again, he's got 2 games late in the season in November where a lot of other people are going to be shining. I think you're going to see his numbers dip. And it's not even going to be solely his fault. I just think Oregon's going to be more focused on running the ball in November when they have to go to Michigan and go to Wisconsin. So ultimately, I think that's why he falls off. But Alex, I'm with you. I think he will be the representative from the Big Ten if they get anybody to New York.
I'll go quick here. I'm going with Donovan Edwards from Michigan. If they have any kind of success and they're in it at the end, it's probably squarely going to fall on his shoulders. He doesn't have to take the minimum share of carries with Blake Corum finally graduating onto the pros. He becomes Blake Corum this year. The kid has just shown over and over and over when he's gotten the opportunity at big games. He's just come through every single time. His numbers with him touching the ball as much as he's going to this year, like I said, I think give him the ability to possibly come out of the Big Ten as a Heisman finalist. I think a lot of that's going to determine how well the team does, and if they can stay in it. But if they do, a lot of it's going to become because of his success, and I think he'll have the numbers to back it up. So him getting the Blake Corum treatment from last year. The biggest difference between him and Blake is he has the home run threat. And we've seen it over and over again. He gets through the first kind of layer of defense and he's not touched. He's probably gone. So Blake struggled a little bit with that, but I think he has a chance to have a really big year. I think he's going to have a big year regardless. If he makes the Heisman finalist, who knows? But I just stuck with him because I think he has a chance. If Michigan stay in the race and not lose too many games, I think he's got a chance to get to New York.
Love that pick as well. I think Donovan's going to have big time numbers this year as well. You mentioning him not having Blake Corum there with him, obviously that means he's going to be getting, a lot more of those snaps there. But I think the important thing is that for Donovan Edwards, he doesn't have a guy like Donovan Edwards behind him. I know Michigan has talented running backs. They recruit well usually as far as running backs go, but there isn't anyone that you have to put on the field outside of Donovan. Donovan was too good to be on the bench, even when you had Blake Corum having the success that he was. So I think that's going to go in his favor there as well. I think those are your top two picks to represent the Big Ten and Heisman. But I couldn't pick one of them because obviously you guys already went through both of them. So the next guy up in my mind was going to be TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson has always had that explosiveness, and when he's on the field, he puts up insane numbers. Problem with it is that he's consistently injured at some point throughout the year. I think with Judkins being there, it's going to be a huge factor for him staying healthy throughout the rest of this year. I think TreVeyon is going to probably be the most, as far as yardage goes and just stats in general, I think he's going to be the most revered person on this team. I think he's going to have, over 1,000 yards, and you're going to see him have the high yards per carry. So I think if anybody from Ohio State can even potentially get a look, it's going to be TreVeyon Henderson, not only because of how well he can run the ball, but just his explosion and what he could, I think, do in the passing attack as well. I think he's going to have the potential to have some crazy numbers here, even though he's going to be splitting that backfield with Judkins.
All right. I honestly thought you were going to pick Judkins with your pick.
I mean, I just think that TreVeyon is going to be the starter there. He literally started as a true freshman. He's been there 3 years already. I think this is still his team, and just what he can do as far as like the big play goes, I think it's a better fit for the offense. Don't get me wrong. I think Judkins is still gonna have a lot of carries in games, but TreVeyon's never had a season where he's carried the ball over 200 times. And I think in this kind of offense, when you can go back and forth between him and Judkins, I think he could potentially have that this year, or he get close to that number just because he's going to be healthy, and I think he could see some more snaps there.
Yeah, I think Henderson and Judkins is going to look a lot like Corum and Edwards from last year. I really do. All right, so that's our Heisman picks. We got to go to Eliminator here. I think this is going to be relatively easy. So no Iowa from Alex.
But here's the thing. If Iowa loses to Oregon in the Big Ten Championship and they lose to Ohio State and the rest of the schedule is so weak that they might not even make the college football playoff with just 2 losses.
That's fair. All right, so we got Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. I think the 4 that most people would consider legit contenders. See, the Seminoles have already been moved over.
I'm surprised they're still on here.
I trust me.
Kick them out the club.
If we really would have had time to have an argument about it today, I probably would have tried to make an adamant effort to not even have them on here. But that being said, too much football left, and with the expanded playoff this year, it's kind of tough to eliminate them. But here's where we're going into week 1, everybody. This is what we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 14 teams that we legit think can win the national championship. I think some stronger than others, but this is where we're at. So, this is always one of our funnest segments of every show because we don't always all agree for one, which is fun, but there's always movement. It's very rare that we come on show after show and this is exactly the same as it was the week before. Obviously, in the week, the first couple of weeks, it'll probably stay the same. But once we get into conference play, kind of all hell breaks loose. So,
and some of these teams even play each other. Like you get Texas and Michigan week 2, you get Georgia and Clemson week 1, like you get Notre Dame and Texas week 1. Like this will look a lot different come by week 3. This could look like madness.
It will. I mean, I would argue. I mean, Clemson. I mean, I would argue both those games. Actually, they're both non-conference games, so I don't think whoever wins or loses necessarily moves, but it definitely hurts. I mean, it definitely hurts for sure. But it's like I said, week 2 right off. Oh no, Georgia Clemson's next week, right? Yeah. So that'll be one right there. Then you got Michigan, Texas the following week. And you got Notre Dame, Texas A&M next week too. So those are all games that we're going to preview. Obviously, we'll be back next Saturday. We're officially in it, everybody. Week 1, we will have game previews. Obviously, pick 'em will start next week. We get into the good part of the season. No more preview, no more nothing. Time to put the ball on the field and start playing.
Now that we're here. With those 14 teams, this will be quick here because I know we're at the 2-hour mark here. But now that we got this all finalized, are you giving anyone that's not on this list a shot to win the national championship this year? Or if it's not just one team, what do you give the field's chances of winning the national championship this year? Whole field.
I just want to look at something
outside of these 14.
I just want to make sure I'm not like glaringly overlooking somebody.
I think the fields, Iowa, exactly, Justin. I think the field's got to be plus 240. God. I think the field's plus 240.
Plus 240.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. But percentage-wise, what would you put them at?
I mean, we have Clemson on here. I mean, who are you looking at? Honestly, I mean, are you looking at? We have K-State on here. So LSU, no. Tennessee, no. Oklahoma, no. Although I think Oklahoma has a chance to be sneaky good. Oklahoma State, no. Miami, no.
Miami's out.
I am taking the graphic. I think the field would be way higher than plus 240.
Same. I give the field a 10% chance to win a national championship this year. Might be lower than that.
Yeah.
I would be shocked. I'd be utterly shocked if you didn't have not only just one of these teams win the national championship. I'd honestly be shocked if you didn't have, if there was one team representing in the national championship that wasn't on this list, I would be legitimately shocked. That means something wild happened in college football this year.
I mean, the season already started off wild. So hopefully that's a preview of what's to come.
Yeah, but I mean, to Bill's point, he always says this: preseason rankings literally shouldn't be a thing because they make no sense. Like Florida State top 10 list checked off win for Georgia Tech already. This Florida State team might win 5 games this year. Last year, you saw Colorado beat TCU early in the year, and TCU was ranked and they were 15, and we saw what debacle that was, and then we saw how Colorado ended the year 4-8. Like preseason rankings are a sham. But just looking at, I'm just fully team talent, schedules, all things included. I just don't see someone dethroning one of these 14 teams.
I agree. I think it would be too much chaos. I don't know if we can mathematically even get there because one of these teams I feel like would still come out on top then. But that is it for this week. Next week, like I said, next week we're live. We're ready to go for real. Everything starts to count next week. I mean, Florida State probably wishes last week didn't count, but too bad. I know we have some games on Thursday, nothing big. I know there's a couple of ranked teams playing, but they're playing, Sisters of the Poor. So I don't think we really need to get into them. And then we'll be back. Saturday morning to get the day started off with everybody. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Any last comments or statements, gentlemen?
I just hope Alex is ready for the year. It's going to be a lot of talk the whole year. Last year, it really only happened. It happened the first time that you guys played Washington, and I picked Washington, and I felt like the bad guy, although I just felt like Washington was a better team in that moment. I felt like the bad guy then. And then season went on. Me and Alex just had some bad blood. The rest of he felt like an honorary Big Ten member last year. So now it's real. Like I'm so excited that we're finally here. And the great thing is that we all play each other, like Alex alluded to earlier.
It is nice that the gods lined up and we do all play each other this year. I would have loved for it to be last year, but it's all right. I'll trade my natty for probably not having any bragging rights on this show come the end of the year, but that'll be fine. Alex, anything? What are you drinking?
Jamba Juice, bro.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I had a beer earlier. Now I got some Jamba Juice. Staying hydrated here, right? It's been hot.
It's probably why your stuff keeps falling out. Yeah, exactly. Alcoholic falling out of his chair.
Dude, that was
keeps going out.
That was the best. Oh, this is coffee. It's not real beer. He gets ready to throw up. That was hilarious. No closing comments. I'm excited for some football next week. Get some pick'ems going. Cottrell, next week we'll have to remind everybody how we finished last year with our pick'ems so that we can start keeping track this year with Superdog picks and all that good stuff. And I wish we would have had a show yesterday so I could be 1-0 and my picks with Georgia Tech winning. But next week we start for real, and I'm feeling like I'm on fire this year. So
yeah, I'll have to have a couple things ready for us next week. I'll have to have the way we ended last year with Pick'em. I'll also have our CFP predictions from right after we ended the show, way too early predictions or whatever, and then we'll get into our college football playoff next week. So yeah, we'll have some good stuff for you guys.
Absolutely.
That will be the first segment of the show next week. Will be our official CFP. Actually, no. I guess we'll probably do our non Power 4 pick first, because that'll segue us right into our top 12, what our official picks for this year are going to be in seedings, and then we'll go right into previews and pick 'em. So it will be a jam-packed, fun show as always next week. Thank you everybody for tuning in as always. And we'll be back next Saturday, ready to go, up and early. Starting to smell and feel the fall in the air a little bit. It's getting close, but college football is back next week, baby. So we will see everybody next week. Till then, see you.